Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and I'm just gonna do a second part to my chapter one since I started with the first 4 issues. I'm just gonna call out 3 issues with the run, just to point highlights of some of my, well, 3 of my favorite issues in this. Because as the series runs, you could see it's hard to say that when you have the original stuff by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, but you could see the art start to really build as far as Burns inking and finishing on this series, right? If you see this cover, like if you saw the Far From Home movie, like, even though I think John Romita did some really cool stuff, large, like amusement stuff in here, Byrne just took it to a different level on this thing, right? Because he'd already been playing with doing upside down panels and having Mysterio in here, who at times a lot of creators kind of look at him and say, this guy is pretty lame with the fishbowl. And they just kind of highlight that. But the whole thing is a mystery, not knowing what it looks like. And then to start out like this, right? So if Spider-Man is able to do it, Mysterio is kind of taking a note from him in this series. So if you've been reading it, and I've talked many times about the upside down panels, Mysterio kind of takes it to another level, right? So he kind of is usurping Spider-Man's power in the book, right? So he comes in here just like in the original story. And I think the colors on this stuff, they didn't try to do anything extra, which is cool. And then, of course, Mysterio shows all of the tricks that he can do, right? And then we had the Human Torch, who came after a fight with Spider-Man. And he's looking good, too. So it's, these next 2 issues are the last 2 issues he inked, right? So you can start to see that, I don't know, the inking just got better and better as it went along. Like, very different from, I know at this point he was working with a brush during this period, but it's just a little different. I don't know, just because it's, but the angles, all the stuff, some of the stuff he couldn't do with Wonder Woman, it's like exploiting with Spider-Man, these sort of angles. And flipping the camera around and such. And Spider-Man with the boots, being able to take out Mysterio and finally shut down his power. So this is the hook of what Byrne was doing ultimately when he changed the costume. That the costume would be more the electricity rather than the original look, which I know people didn't take to, but anyway. And this way he was thinking he was going to do a whole solid black on the costume, but he went with the classic, black with blue highlights, right? Torch comes in. They're not in there for a fight. Spider-Man's trying to finish things up. And this is where people kind of take the whole Green Goblin thing, because Stan remembered wrongly that, hey, Electro became someone who wasn't in the book. He was just some nobody, right? And he constantly said that that's what they wanted to do with the Green Goblin. So everyone says, oh yeah, they already did that with Electro. But that wasn't the plan. That wasn't Ditko's plan. He already said that a few times, right? So we got some great pictures. It's also the end period of the very baggy look that people used to have, and going from the 90s to the 2000s. It wouldn't be till the Dipset would start bringing people back down to normal size clothes, and Betty shows up. He's feeling close to her. And then it's like, yeah, the drama in this part is really him really capturing it, where it's like he won, he had this great victory over Electro, and J. Jonah Jameson would go out and kill it, right? Oh man, I don't know. Should I just keep going through this and go through every issue? And then Mysterio, from the earlier part, Mysterio, they put an ad out to take him, meet him on the Brooklyn Bridge. So this, where Byrne would feel like he'd kind of hint to stuff that would happen later, right? With Gwen Stacy and Goblin. So they meet on the bridge. And this is what you want. You want someone that can get around Spider-Man's powers. You don't want to do stories where you just show how cool Spider-Man is. You want to wind up just like the early ones where he can get beat. So then there's somewhere to go when the next issue comes, right? And Mysterio just appears, right? Spider-Man puts a tracer on him. And this is, I think, almost throwback to Alien, because I think it was an African guy who played Alien. Spider-Man going on the upside down panel, right? He's walking in there, and he finds Mysterio's outfit, or does he? And you see something like this in the Far From Home, right? So then we get to this one, and so what a way to leave! Like to leave where you have the Goblin and the Hulk, right? And this is, as I said before, when Byrne was doing his run, this is what the look that he was going for. I think it's in Hulk issue 4 or 5. They have a panel. This is almost the exact panel, right? So really getting that Kirby sort of look in there, and more mass instead of a sort of Arnold, right? And look at how small Spider-Man is to what's name. And I think, throw this in there. Alan Davis's Spider-Man is almost the same sort of build as Byrne's. It's really close, right? And the Goblin looking amazing. The art in this thing is like, and you can see that like Byrne's inking is constantly shifting. He's constantly changing his approach. There's sometimes effects people feel that's his, him getting lazy or something like that, but he's constantly trying to broaden his approach. Where we got to this period where you see it just start to build, and the colors, all the effects, right? But Spider-Man's realizing, hey, how could he throw me out in space and we're just in another room? And that's cool, where he hits him. And he put a tracker on him, which he doesn't know, so the Spider Sense can connect to that. And so my Spider Sense is tingling because of close proximity of the spider trace I planted on Mysterio when I met him earlier as Peter Parker earlier today. Yeah, I messed it up. But anyway, it's overpowering my normal Spider Sense. Let's make sure we got this, because he said everyone heard what happened, right? So It says he spotted the intercom when he got into the room so they could hear it. So it's not a big bit, but so, and that's one of the things that I don't think when Green Goblin appears, Norman Osborn appears a few issues later. So Byrne has him meeting Norman Osborn earlier, which I think works for the thing, but there's no way to really do the mystery, so I think he cut that out in the next issue, right? So he's going on this trip. And then he's establishing that Peter Parker is clearly a little bit younger than the rest of the people. That he's going to be going off to college soon, but not saying if it's, he has one more year of high school or not. And then we get the Goblin. This is cool, where despite he can get hit, but I think the way Roger Stern plays it, that as long as Spider-Man doesn't decide to hold back, these guys can fight him, which isn't a way to go, right? And then we get to jump to the present story. Now these flashes in the beginning are just like a longer sequence from the classic splash page that hints what's going to come later. So starting with that, it's not like, I know some people are like, why is he doing that? But you got so many, I think Black Panther, so many stories where they jump around in time. What's that thing? Pulp Fiction, stuff like that, right? And we got sort of what the Hulk would have been had Byrne, been able to stay on it, right? And that there's no way Spider-Man can even fight him. And that's one of the key things in Byrne. So even the other one, when he fights people, it's not about, hey, let me just cut loose and then I can win. And then he uses this to escape the Hulk. So the Green Goblin planned to have this finish Spider-Man the first time. Then he gets stuck because he got to pay his own fare back. And see, Byrne kind of said there's no point in doing the mystery since everyone already knows, but act like it's just a sort of a setup already, right? So we get to this one, which would be one of the few guest stars. There's also Daredevil guest stars in this outside the Hulk, but I think Giant Man really got the whole, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Now this follows the original story, but I think this just showcases how cool these guys could be, right? So Aunt May is now in the hospital, and the Wasp is thinking that Spider-Man's a bad guy. So she goes after them. She attacks him first. He uses his web to capture her. And she said, oh no. She just signals to say that let me go back. So Egghead sends a false message, which of course gets to Ant-Man and the Wasp, and she goes out to look for him, but she's not supposed to engage, right? She does engage. Spider-Man captures with his web, and then she goes out to help, right? And while they call the police, he's going to do the crime of the century, right? See what it says? The old saying, how big how hard the big ones fall, right? So you're inverting that statement, right? So it's not exactly the cliche, right? And but this is the trick, which they kind of forget, which I think he used on the Hulk, that he at this point he could change and go from big to small at will, almost instantaneously, and could dodge Spider-Man speed, right? And Wasp joins in, but Spider-Man's quick and see how he webbed up. But that's why he can't, and see in the movie, he just got webbed up and fell to the floor, right? In Civil War, this says, nope, he's too big. It just flexes and he can break out of that, right? And Spider-Man is trying to get away, but then Giant Man gets even bigger. See? And he moves regular speed, not trying to do the real science. It's not real science. You can't do that. Then you just have a character that's a liability, right? So they're planning to do their crime and taking this thing. And then Spider-Man saying, you attacked, he said he attacked us. And he's like, no, you guys attacked me. Right? So then they talk it out. But then, I think this happens in the original, but then for great visual, showing him, Spider-Man's face, and him get smaller. Right? So then they realize that it's a fake broadcast, and they go after Egghead. And cool to show that you couldn't just like step on the Wasp without her doing something. The Giant Man gets in here and so Wasp, of course, insults Spider-Man yet again, and Spider-Man bolts, right? And at this point, Betty is upset because he's been blowing her off, right? But he's not been blowing it off. He's been trying to save, fight against the Goblin and all this other stuff, right? And she kind of jets out, and at the end, he gives up being Spider-Man, right? So since I'm here, I'm only 20 minutes in, let's just give you the end of this story, right? It's the end. I think he covers a lot in this issue. A lot of the last issues up to 18. But this was Ditko's big plan that Stan wasn't happy with J. Jonah Jameson's having this big, huge smile, right? That Spider-Man kind of gave up. And Betty's trying to figure things out. And he's jumping around while Aunt May's in trouble, right? And connecting the stories that happened before. They haven't seen Spider-Man, but Giant Man speaking for him here. Daredevil also not believing it. you know, the torch. The torch comes up in here in a second, right? And the torch believing in him. So it's a good moment in Spider-Man's life where the other heroes realize he's not really the bad guy that people portray. But Aunt May's back. She's doing better. And Liz finally opening up, you know, that she's not with Flash. And not just flirting with him, trying to show what he can do, but is not interested. And realize that there's so much negativity that the crooks can just say, "Hey, call a cop," and then the cops will come after Spider-Man. And then Byrne connected these two. They had similar hairstyle. I think that's in the Zero issue. And he realizes that May's doing a little better. Betty's into Peter, but she can't trust him right now. So she moves on. Spider-Man trying to sell his webbing, but I think for story-wise, it's supposed to be an hour that it breaks, but it's like saying, hey, they're not just supposed to be permanent. They're not interested in it. Then the Sandman pops up. And they had this, instead of him showing up early, he shows up later. And Sandman is kind of character hard to handle. Spider-Man done right, shouldn't even really be able to beat him. But while he does that, he rips the mask and you see Spider-Man running. So it even gets worse for him. So all this stuff was in the, I think this is the cover. This is similar to the cover of the issue, I think 17 or something like that. So one of the things, at this point, there's really, all it is taking the Spider-Man bits and kind of tying it together in kind of a positive way. Like, not positive, but a more cohesive way, right? Instead of flying by the seat of your pants, setting up Norman Osborn early, you know. We had this bit with Flash going out as Spider-Man and then him getting beat up by these people, capturing the mask being mixed up. And even Flash, this is the saddest moment in his life. Even Flash isn't with it anymore. Betty's moved on to Ned Leeds. It's like, how can anything get any worse for him? But the one positive is that Aunt May is doing better, and he's like, nope, he's not sticking with any of this negativity. He's coming back. Now the story was supposed to end right here, but Byrne gave a little bit of a comeback to this. So he finished up the story where you have the final fight between the Sandman and Spider-Man, right? And then Spider-Man gets a vacuum, takes him, he does a phony fight with them to take some pictures, and ending on a positive note, not clearing up his struggles with J. Jonah Jameson, but yeah. So yeah, there we go. We did 4 issues of the, I think, 9 to do. So just to show you where it's changed from Byrne's inking to Al Milgram's inking. I think people had issue with it, but it goes with the saying, the Byrne needed an inker. Like, you can't really complain when he gets an inker and they say, well, not that one. I guess you can't, but it's not, you know. So there you go. Chapter 1, after this part, I think outside of Electro, I don't think there's much changes to the actual history of Spider-Man, you know, besides bridging and pushing characters up. and switching the timing and not having sort of the some of the stuff that Ditko does better, the interpersonal relations, where Byrne does some of that, but some of that gets kind of delayed and for more of the action stuff. So, but Byrne does that stuff well too, right? But he's giving you more bang for your buck as far as the action, starting with the action, getting into the story, and then going back to the action of the story. So, there we did it. We closed off this chapter on chapter 1. Spinner Rack out.